Hello. Hello. I think my sound was quiet yesterday. Hopefully it's okay today. Okay. Hopefully. We're continuing to make our game. The battle card game currently is called Shuffle Wars, and yesterday we talked about how silly that is and how perhaps maybe we use the silly. That being not taking ourselves too seriously might be part of the themes that our game uses. And yesterday we talked about how we use theme. That theme is not just something we think of after the fact, after we've absorbed some sort of entertainment like a book, movie. We don't say, what was the theme? And that's really interesting, but not helpful. I think you can all remember doing a book report. But instead, perhaps theme is a tool that we use when we create these things. And the theory, well, it's not a theory. The idea is that theme is a helpful tool because we have lots of decisions to make in the making of a very complex uh, piece of software and a very complex entertainment product, whether it be a story or what have you. If we have something like a word, a phrase that really encapsulates what we want the player to be thinking and feeling as they play, what a great tool to use to help us make a whole host of decisions in every element in the game. And if you are so inclined, you might look back at games you've played, think about what the theme of the game might be, and then try to notice how many details were aligned with the theme. You think you might find that your favorite games, your best games, the ones you were most immersed in, had a very deliberate theme. It might not have been explicitly told to you, but I'll bet the title of the game matches that theme. I'll bet the atmosphere and the environment and the characters and the story and the interface, the font, the colors, yeah, I'll bet it all matched that theme. And in that way, if we have an idea of what the theme of our game might be, perhaps it is battle. Yes, of course it is. Perhaps it's about you commanding battle, like a general on a battlefield. Yes, of course. Perhaps it is about some forces that are going into battle for you that are not necessarily realistic or, shall we say, serious. I think it's safe to say our game is already taking shape like that, that it's not really supposed to be taken too seriously. With names like Tiger God and Doom Garden, I think that's safe to say. Well, we talked about theme yesterday and how that should help us in many aspects of the game as we develop further. And then we talked about what further development means. If this represents one half of a core gameplay that we want our players to learn, get used to, get better at, play very often, because they pick cards and then they go into battle. And they might manage their marching orders, which I still need to make this a bit more prominent. In fact, I need to make this either we need to do this and make it like a big old pop up in the middle or something, because this gets forgotten all the time. The marching orders. Uh, we need to consider that beyond this core gameplay, our players are going to be asked to do other things. And what those things might be is sort of the question we considered last time. If this is the core gameplay and they do this a lot, that's fine. What is it like to do this? Well, it takes a few minutes. There's a couple of rounds, maybe 3, if it goes into overtime. You have some strategy. You have some thoughts about it. There's a little bit now of thinking of changing your marching orders midway if you want to do that. Okay. And in that way, actually, I want to definitely concentrate firepower right here. These. Evidently he was low and they were attacking the ones low health. So it takes a couple of minutes to play a match. Goes through a couple of rounds. And you might win, you might lose, okay. And then you can do it again. And that's really it. You could quit. And that's it. So our gameplay does not include much beyond that yet. And so, of course, further development is going to include what is beyond this core gameplay. How should we challenge the player? What should they be led to do? What progression is there? What variation? What contrast? What rhythms are there? And I think the rhythm, we talked about these 4 tenets of design, but useful in all design. The rhythm is rather straightforward. This start of a rhythm here where we go to this mode of play that is very different. It actually has some contrast. And we think about our cards. We think about our marching orders. We place cards on the table. And we play and we go to this mode, contrast. But it's also done over and over in a very comfortable rhythm. The rhythm is going to help us. The variation between the cards is going to help us. The contrast between the 2 modes helps us. The progression of a match goes from 3 cards to 4 cards and potentially to 5. And that progression helps us. So the progression, variation, rhythm, contrast, these things help us. And yet, and it has helped us up to this point. It's a decent little gameplay loop. But to ask someone to spend more than a few matches on this might be a bit much because there's really not that much there. This rhythm, this progression, this variation, this contrast is here, and yet further development really should be considering what else, what other contrast can we deliver, what other variation, what other progression. In particular, we talked about a progression that might go from match to match in a path, say. The player goes along a path and goes up against new opponents that are somehow tougher or more challenging, and the player gets more because of those challenges achieved, or they don't get there. That's one example of a progression that could be further development outside of this core gameplay. So we talked about that yesterday, and we brought up themes that would apply to our game in particular, but also what themes do for us when we're coming up with an entertainment product like this, and how we can use that. We talked about that yesterday. Talked about the tenets of game design, and we talked about the 5 questions that players have when they go into a game. Who am I? Where am I? This led us to solidify the themes, really. Who are you? Well, you're a general. Where am I? Well, you're on a battlefield and you need to send troops into battle or forces into battle. Fantasy, over the top, not don't take yourself too seriously, forces like Hippobot. And what am I trying to do? Well, you're trying to win each match. This is where our progression idea came from because this one match takes about 5 minutes and you're done. Is that the entire game? It can't be. It can't be. This is an intriguing little gameplay loop. It holds attention for that long, and to ask the player to spend more time on it means there must be something more to learn, something more to be challenged by. Do we do that? No, we don't have that yet. So we talked more about that yesterday. The other two questions of 5 that players ask when they play a game: who am I? Where am I? What is my overall objective? What am I trying to do? But then the last two are, what is working against me to get that? And what is working in my favor as I try to reach that objective? These are also indications of what we could do outside of this core gameplay loop. So we have thought through a little bit of what is outside of this 2-stage main gameplay loop where you pick your cards and send them into battle, and then you are in battle and you have minor actions to perform, but mostly you're just watching it play out. And this is me focusing on something we might change, which is the second part of this gameplay loop is actually quite passive, and maybe that's not so great. Ideas that we have played with in the past include adding more cards to the deck. I brought up previously that if and when we were to bring up new cards, we can look at them in the data here. It's a little weird, but it's going to be here in the draw pile. We have 50 cards, and the 50 is a number we landed on among 2 players who play these amount of cards for this many rounds. 50 works out well because 2 players are either going to go through 20 or up to 30 cards in one match. So they're going to use many of the cards, but not all, meaning that replay and playing the game again, you're going to run into new cards, and that's a good thing. It helps replay. But interestingly, we found out that if we have these 50 cards here and we add new cards, we have the potential to cause a problem based on how our gameplay loop currently goes. There are 3 cards to play in the first round. You are given 5 cards. So each player has 5 cards. Each player is going to play 3. That means they're holding 2 in their hand for the next round. They're dealt 5 more cards. There's 7 cards each player. They play 4. And so there's 3 cards in their hand. If it goes to overtime, they have those 3 cards. They're dealt 5 more. And they have 8 cards in each hand. And they play 5. If that's the landscape and we add cards, let's game that out. I add, let's say, 5 really powerful, super crazy cards or something. Let's just call them wild cards. They're here in the deck. There's only a chance of 1 in 10 because there's 50 cards or so. Say we said add 6. Cool. Sounds reasonable, right? But let's just game that out. What if there is a potential? What if one player gets more than 2 wild cards in their hand right up at the top? If these cards are playable as if they are these cards with stats that can go into battle and all that stuff, that's one thing. They could just be played. But if not, if they are special cards, if they do something special like, resurrect or nuke the other side or boost another card or something like that, like they are spent or something, and they can't actually be played in battle, well, then the player is stuck because they need to play 3 to go into battle on the first round. If they only have 5 cards in their hand and more than 2 of them are non-playable, they are stuck. Either these special extra cards that we might add are playable, or they somehow become playable, or we limit it to 2, like literally 52 cards, because of that potential. Not very likely, but there is a potential that one player gets both of them. Then they could still at least play the other 3 cards and it would work. It wouldn't break the game. But what I'm describing is a game-breaking condition. If I have 3 cards that are special and cannot be played, I could break the game. It's not likely, but it's possible. And because of that, I need to avoid that. So we've talked about adding cards, and there's certainly creative ways to add cards that aren't necessarily playable, but still don't break the game. We have to think about that, though, and we have to consider what that means. For example, a resurrection card. This is a card that you get in your hand and you're like, ooh, wow. And you decide whether you're going to play it up at the beginning or later, like in round 2, or perhaps save it just in case you need it in overtime. And if that's true, you lay it down and one of the cards in the discard pile comes out. Well, actually, round 1, there is no cards in the discard pile. That's another consideration, but let's pretend there is. Then this card comes back and is on the battlefield for you. Problem solved, because it is a card in battle. What if there's another card that boosts the power or, boosts the rating of all the stats on one card? If it is a card that's already got a 3 in it, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 10, then that would kind of, how do I say this? That would be an overpowered card. Maybe that's not a bad thing for one round, but we have to consider the second and third order effects of these additional cards we might add to make things more interesting, to add variation, contrast, rhythm, progression. All right. Well, today, what I was considering is maybe we just continue to think about that while we do the stuff that we know we need to do. The really menial stuff like this menu. This menu is lame and dumb, but it did need to be developed as a separate scene with a mechanic. I mean, it didn't need to, but I'm doing it that way. And, it doesn't take very long, but it is sort of a necessary thing. If we do have things like a splash screen, an options menu, a credit screen, perhaps a screen that shows progression of your battles and matches toward a main goal, or your collection of cards that you have collected. By the way, this is not technically a card or a deck building game yet. We haven't really implemented any mechanics that build a deck. We don't do that, actually. We play with a set deck of cards. Well, a deck of cards that is recreated every match, but players don't retain cards. That's not part of the game yet. It could be, but this is a great example of progression in the larger game that other games have employed. To have a progression in their game is to allow players to collect cards, to build their deck, to have something to go for over the long term, to achieve small pieces that build up towards a larger state of achievement. That's what the deck building mechanic is all about. We could do that too. But for now, let's do the menial splash screen stuff. No big deal. What I would prefer to do is keep it simple. I have a copy of my splash screen. Likewise, I will make a copy of the other screens. I have a separate directory for testing, or in other words, prototyping and working, which is going to effectively be the build when we're done. I don't mind putting these straight into the build or working directory because, frankly, this is not rocket science. This is not hard. Spending more time on the core mechanics of the game, that was hard. This is not hard. Yeah, I mean, options maybe, I suppose. I assume we're going to have options. I don't know what they would be at all. I don't care, frankly, at the moment. But the idea that we have some kind of progression, boy, I don't even know what to call this yet. I wouldn't know what to call this yet because I haven't decided what this is. We haven't talked about it, and there's no one else here. We haven't talked about it enough to know what would be more appropriate for the themes of our game, what is needed to round out the experience of the player, etc. For now, we could call it progression. If this were like a path, that players starts at and, gains things, that would be great. We haven't really talked about making this a deck building game, except in passing, and I don't necessarily want to do that, but, I will make a deck screen. So we just made a bunch of extra scenes, not a big deal. The only one that's actually we sit in a lot is this test scene, the proto game. I'm going to leave it here. I'm just going to use that. The only other one we're using is this main menu. If these were to be switched, we go from scene to scene. They must be, for Unreal, it must be sitting here identified as switchable, basically. This technically means if we are going to build the game, please include it. Include this scene, include that scene, exclude the other ones. Like don't include this template scene. Well, we actually want to indicate for example, which scene you start the game at when you launch the application. And we also want to include these other scenes that we might go to simply because we don't need to do it in a particular order, but I'm being organized. We do need to include these in this list of scenes that we might build, or because it's also the list of scenes that we could potentially switch to, and I am going to switch scenes. That's what happens when I go from main menu to our prototype game, to our main menu again. It is switching scenes, and so it has to be in this list for Unity to know that it's possible to do. Long story short, I have a pattern for making these simple user interfaces. It does just use a very old version of the GUI system that Unity had, and I find it to be the simplest. It is in code, and I have control over it, and I like that. So I'm just going to use that. I do want to keep this simple. So I'm going to use that pattern for all of the scenes that I want to use as basically the menu system, right? There's the main menu, it's the hub, but I could go to the options from the main menu and back. I could go to the credits menu and back. The splash screen is going to come first, but I don't want it to do any more than send you to the main menu. And you might be asking, wow, what's the point of this at all? I think I talked about it yesterday. The splash screen introduces the player to the game, and in terms of theme, it's our way of initially it's giving first impressions to the player's experience. What is this game about? Who am I? Where am I? What am I trying to do? What's working against me? What do I have working for me? We could begin to answer these questions immediately on the splash screen. And so we will. I'm going to make a separate script for each of these to keep it nice and neat and to allow me to just fill in a pattern. I don't care to make it any more complicated than that. I got to be honest. I'm just going to go through the motions today. This is definitely me on autopilot. Since we talked about design more yesterday, I don't mind doing more of the menial stuff today. I mean, it's got to get done at some point, so why not just do it today? With this, what we would have is effectively a menu system that, looks as bare bones as everything else. I'm going to call this progression screen, but I know for a fact this is going to have to change. We don't know what the progression is. I'm imagining a path going from one opponent to another, but I don't know. I just know that there's more to this game than the core gameplay that we've outlined so far. Likewise, deck screen, the potential to build a deck. We have nothing for that at all. But I'm going to put it there as a placeholder. I may remove it at some point, right? It's a possibility. And at this time, I think it's safe to say it's all right to just move forward with these placeholder menu scenes and scripts, because as we try out new ideas, we'll have a place to try them out. We'll have mechanisms in place to support other ideas. For example, this menu system with the basic credits and options and main menu will support having a splash screen and having somewhere to go, etc. So I will just do this. By copying the scene and then essentially copying the structure, I don't know that I need this quit on escape here in the splash screen, but I have just a blank scene, no big deal, easy enough, copy. Now, watch me break this, paste, because there's already something called menu. This is actually called splash. There we go. Let's save. This is not about the main menu. This is about the splash screen. So, I don't need to say much more than this. Actually, the menu is already so bare bones, this almost is a splash screen. And quitting seems like a ridiculous option in the splash screen, so I'm going to remove that. And that's really the only change I need to make. If I just remove the quit. Yep. Such that if I play this now, I mean, it'll look exactly like the main menu. Yep. And I mean, it's serviceable as a splash screen. But let's see, instead of going forward into the game, we go into main menu. That is the name of the scene, is it not? It is. Okay. So I'm calling these by name. Um, and because it is in the build settings, it knows to go to it by name. Done. So it did actually switch to main menu. It doesn't look like it because there's really hardly any difference between Splash and main. But already we've connected some of our main menu system, or our system for menus, and that's good. Let's move forward. I'm just going to ignore that and continue on. Likewise, these other menu scenes are patterns. I'm going to keep following this pattern. It's really not that complicated. Instead of the quit button, I'm going to have a back button. Actually, I think I'll just repurpose the start button. So we go from the menu to credits and back to menu. I'll reform main menu in a second. Again, the name of this class needs to be corrected because I'm not copying the name of that class. So the only thing I am very careful. You say that again. I am very careful when I copy and paste any code. What I do is copy and paste and look for all of the places in which I need to modify what I just pasted, because that's the only danger. If you copy and paste code that works, it's good. But if you neglect to consider what needs to be corrected from what you pasted, that's where problems happen. Again, I do not need a quit button. And I probably want to place this somewhere else. Should I explain this pattern a little bit? Not really. Interfaces have a 2D space to work in, not a 3D space. Our cards are even in 3D space. It doesn't quite look like it, but it does. I guess I do not need this legalese at the bottom of a credit screen, and I do need to say credits up at the top. Anyway, this is 2D space that this interface is working on, not 3D space. So I really only need to work on X and Y. Rather than being worried about pixels, because the engine does worry about pixels, I don't want to. I just want to worry about the layout of this screen, no matter what size it is. In that way, I don't care if it's big or small. The number of pixels had changed, but I don't want my layout to change. So this pattern relies on a proportion or a percentage of screen space. This is the full width in pixels. And if I multiply that number, it's like 1920 and when it's full size, but it's smaller right here. Whatever the size is, it's evaluated every single frame, and this is a proportion of screen space. So this can be reliably adhered to no matter what size the screen is, and I like that pattern quite a lot. In this case, I just want to move this button lower, so I'm going to, this is 45% from the top of the screen, so I'm going to bring it down to about 85%. So I would like this button to be down here. Yeah, something like that. Maybe that's too low. And by the way, I do want to get rid of the legalese label. I don't need it. And I do want to change the title of this to not be the title of the game, but to just say credits. And the size of that is a little aggressive. I don't like it to be that big either. Let's do this. I guess I'm not using legalese right now. And as we change it, it's changing dynamically here. So let's just continue to change things. The back button is okay. The size is about right, but the size of the button could be smaller. Just a little bit. So I'm nudging it 5% to the left, and I'm also going to make it 5% no, 10% narrower, right? 5% on each side, and that just makes it centered. Sure, why not? It's actually going to work at 10% height. Yeah, it's a little small. Okay. This is also going to be used in our pattern because having a menu screen that we go to and then go back to the main menu is going to be something we do more than once. I know this should work. So now when we play, because all this is in code, it was saved as this code, and there we go. Okay, cool. I don't have a button to go to the credit screen, though. Let's fix that. In our main menu, I can just hit play and adjust it in code. Let's raise this button up a little bit first. Sure. What's credits? Credits is fine. I'm going to lower this button too, actually. Oh, and you know what? I kind of liked the style being normal here. I do want to follow that pattern credits, actually. So if I look at the credit screen again really quick, I just want to confirm that it has that, yeah, the simpler here. And in fact, this was bold plus italic, and I actually don't want that. For our menu. Done. Tiny details. If I deal with this now, I don't have to deal with this later. I'm happy to close that script and not touch it for a very long time, and that's fine. Happy to do that, but it means that I pay attention to it, pay attention to those details right now. All right. I need to add more than just credits. I'm going to move this. I do want the start button to be prominent, very large, etc., etc., etc. Perhaps I should just move the buttons over to the sides. I don't need it to be all in the center like that. Like a literal menu you get at a restaurant. Don't need that. What if it were off to the side? And in that way we have room. We can keep the big old start button in the middle. Yeah. In fact, this centered and large is UI design saying to the player, this is an important thing. This is something you should notice and know and come back to a lot. This is something I don't want you to do very often. I don't want you to quit. Yeah, so I'm going to follow this pattern. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to make more buttons. And I suppose I should do this. I can do this. By the way, there's more to this pattern. This little bit makes the hovering over the mouse something that I can control. In this case, just the color of the text, but I can control more than that. And there is some mechanisms like the background, the button image that is changing, but long story short, I need to have this here as well. It's part of the pattern. So, let's make a bunch of quit buttons, and then I will change it. Let's see, we need credits. What else do we need? Options. We need progression. And I think we're going to have to call it something shorter, like a path. And deck. And now I don't know what these other things are yet, but I'm pretty sure we need them. In fact, having start by itself is likely not going to stay that way. It's serviceable when the game is this simple, but like it's useless otherwise. So I imagine there's going to be some single player, some campaign style experience, and some online matchmaking experience. Like entirely different menu stuff has to be on the way. It's just for right now, it's going to take one step. I can copy this pattern, boom, and change things about it, like credits, where it is. I'm going to move it over. Let's see, this is 1.5, sorry, 15% from 70% means it goes to the 85% thing, meaning we're going to start from 15. And I don't want it to quit. I want it to go to credits. By duplicating the pattern and changing the values, it's now the button over here. Why doesn't that look centered? What? This is centered. 35 and 35 is 7, and then 30% more is 100. So yes. Okay, well, I'm going to do this because that looks better. And then I will change this accordingly. Why does this look different? Isn't that weird? I'm not understanding the math though. This goes from 70 to 85. Not 90. I'm confusion. I will leave it at there. It just looks right. I'm eyeballing it, and I'll come back. Yeah, and this actually does go to the credit screen and back. Yay! So we'll continue to do that. Likewise, I don't need people to go to the credit screen often or quit, so these can stay where they are, frankly. But let's keep building this up because people might want to go to options. People might want to do that. Just because, I mean, it's not a coding stream really, but just because I do give a 2D object that I can play with. It's got a width and height and a position in 2D space, X and Y. I do take the current width and height of the screen in pixels so I can use that. I do use a style so that I can play with things like font. And then I save the title of things like buttons and labels. I use a color as well. I am using the mouse position, but then I follow this pattern. There's the percentage multiplied by the width. There's the percentage multiplied by the height. So I can position it and size it, regardless of what the screen size is. I'm just dealing with screen space, and that's so much easier. I can also adjust the font size based on screen space, and that's easy as well. Format it, label it, done. And I just use that same object, these same variables over and over again as I build up the interface. So I'm going to continue to build up the interface. All those options. I don't have an options screen yet. Oh, I do, actually. But I need to move it somewhere else. I imagine, maybe over here. And, perhaps up there. Something like that. I mean, this is pretty much working. Maybe I actually want it. And I'm going to continue to build out that pattern. I think path is a pretty good name, actually. I'm still going to call the scene progression screen, basically to remind myself that I need to change those. Oops. Okay, this is the position and vertical. There we go. And so I'm also changing this. And deck. Now, I'm already concerned about the symmetry, but again, we are just building out the mechanics of things. Like, this is really nothing to be concerned about yet, right? Right. So, I think these point to the right scenes. Oh, which is called deck. And this is just called progression. It is. Okay. I can see up here that it is changing, but because these are all duplicates of the main menu, it holds the main menu script. So, okay. Cool. Let's actually use our credits screen because this has a very clean thing set up to do the back button. And build this out. Options. in that way, there is no difference. I could definitely see a need to make, this is a very generic standard menu system, right? And I find the need to make one now. Could I find the need to make this, I don't know, fancy or non-standard in some way? Yeah, absolutely. I could totally see that. But this is still going to say credits, is it not? It is. There we go. So now when I go to options, I go to options, I go to credits, I go to credits, okay, etc. I might in the future say, yeah, we're going to do something fancy. Our deck screen is going to be integrated with the main menu and blah, blah, blah. Sure. And at that time, just change it. No big deal. But until then, we're not stopped by this. There will be something in place. In that way, we can test other things. We can get things done. We good. Literally just calling this deck. I have no idea what to do with this yet. The name of the class, this script, is deck screen. The name of this scene, the Unity scene, the 3D space where things can happen and objects exist, is called deck. Deck and deck screen, I'm keeping separate names explicitly because I want to keep it straight. I want to keep it organized. So these shorter names are for the scenes. These longer names that somewhat match are for the scripts. Um, you know, I want to make sure that as I go forward, I keep things simple. In fact, I may rename this to be path instead of progression. Actually sounds really smart. Should we do that? Yes, we should. I just used an uppercase A. I wouldn't be able to rename it properly without doing that. Likewise, you know what? Let's just call this path screen. Shorter names are better. I will need to rename the file to match. Otherwise, there is a problem. Visual Studio and Unity will immediately complain if these don't match. The name of the file here and the name of this class right there. They need to match. Okay. Here we go. I do have a path screen. Oh, darn, I just realized these were not centered. I likely have to go back to keep it nice and neat and organized. Doggone it. I will do that. Okay, this is garbage. This is called options, but I'm going to change that. Call it path screen. Kind of like the idea of the player traveling along a path and going closer to their goal. It's obvious and simple, and why are we doing anything else fancy? If the player understands it and they're happy doing it, why not, right? Until we find a better idea, it's good. says path. We go back. We go to path. Oh, that's right. Currently menu goes to something called progression. Yes. Oh, by the way, this was when I changed the file name, this the scene name, this was automatically changed because it referred to the same thing. Unity is really good about keeping track of assets with things called meta files. Meta files have metadata. So no matter what you do with them, you could move them in another folder, you could rename the file, it doesn't matter. Unity is going to keep track of what is supposed to be connected to what. It's really good about that. As long as Unity is running, it is managing all that stuff for you, and it's keeps it simple. Hey, looks like we have a main menu that can go to deck, path, options, credits. We could quit and we can start. Yep, we good. And the only thing I wanted to just change, because yes, is the fact that this might not be all zeroed out. And I want to make sure that it is, so that there's no issues. All right, I think we're fine. Okay, let's look at what we got here. If I actually started the splash screen now, the game looks like this. Hey, there's this game called Shuffle Wars. Welcome, you know, like this. And all you can do is start. This actually makes sense. We have an opportunity to introduce ourselves effectively. The game can introduce itself to the player. And we don't really want to do anything else until the player is acknowledging they are engaging with this game and hitting the start button. From here, we might do something else and not call it start. But yeah, actually, we have this. We can do this now. It's all good. I'm literally hitting escape to go back to the main menu, and I guess we should fix that soon. But you know what? I'm gonna make this lowercase q quit stuff because I don't need it to be so aggressive. How do I say that? Hello. When I say quit, yeah, I'm doing this capital stuff. Don't need it. Don't want it. In fact, we should be talking about font soon. Do I want this to say start? I don't know. Maybe I want the splash screen to say begin. Let's go for that first, actually. That sounds pretty good. Do I need legalese in the start screen? I don't know. I don't know. You're asking me questions. What I was going to try and do, though, is pretend I'm the player. I just downloaded this game, and I already know the name of it. Part of the splash screen's job can be like, yes, you are here. Welcome. You have arrived. I mean, if you're going to somewhere, if you're going to, you know, go to a party or an event, someone's house, a location that you like, you already know the location you're going to and the event and the thing. But to arrive is to sort of have the confirmation. You see the park that you were going to. You have the big banner over the party that says happy birthday or whatever. You are confirmed that you got there. That's another function of the splash screen. At all along the way, we support the player's experience, and you could go all the way down to the level of just confirming that, yes, player, we see you, we hear you, we acknowledge that you are hovering over the begin button. Yeah, this is what we are doing. We're supporting the player by confirming, yeah, that's what we're here, we're with you, go for it. In fact, we're going to color it yellow to tell you, I mean, yellow might not be the best word or best color, but we're highlighting it to tell you, yes, go for it. And that way, we are doing something. I'm not really sure I want the begin and the start button to be in exactly the same place. Here's why. Click, click. Whoops, I'm already in the game and I missed something. Oops. So I like this in the middle. Maybe apply. Which I do love that apply. Butts and tweak little things. It is not the general practice to tweak tiny details early in the process. No. However, in the spirit of let's get something good in place so I don't have to think about it for a while. Yeah, actually, I do want to do that. Let's go back to the splash screen. So here I am saying I like the idea of putting this button in a slightly different position to avoid the possibility of oops. Pardon me. To avoid the possibility of the player accidentally clicking begin and then start immediately and going straight into a game. And the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. Wrong. Okay. I'm going to make this thing bigger too. I mean, just try and stop me. You can't. Notice if I make it wider and taller, the X and Y has not changed, and so it's off-center. No big deal. In fact, let me make this even and simple, and that way I don't have to think about it. If this is 40%, then there's 30% on either side, because 30 plus 30 is 60, and 60 plus 40 is 100. So I'm dealing with screen space, and I just completely messed that up. Over 3. Dealing with screen space, and in that way it makes it easier to consider layout. I'm gonna go a little lower. Yeah, I don't really want that. I don't want that accidental press to be a possibility. So let's look at this. Okay, it's better, I guess. It's good enough for now. I'm at a point where I need to recognize when I'm spending too much time on a thing too early. This is one of those times. Yet, I would like to avoid issues. Please. Okay. So the game starts here, and I can totally imagine like one of the things you might change is having more space that we could actually use. This big old button in the way might be in the way of artwork and stuff. But I do appreciate now that we have a way to do different things Perhaps path is more like the campaign mode. It needs to belong over here and be called something else. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. And I don't care about, you know, let me, let me just acknowledge chat for a second. Yes, of course. If I am here in the credit screen, what do I want to see? Well, let's use our pattern some more and make another label. We have this little label that says credits at the top. Let's use it again and make more. It doesn't need to be bold. But you know what? And I'm going to put it in place. I need to adjust the size of the font, and for that I will want something that I can potentially come back and 24. Something I can adjust easily. So by keeping all the numbers up here, I want to be able to have all the mechanics already in place, and I just adjust numbers. That's fast and easy. Oh, I did the wrong thing. This is centered. I want this down here. 5% from the edge, 90% wide. That should be centered. Oh, interesting. Oh, let's actually do this correctly. This is already coming down 20% from the top. Sorry, 25%. So I can start at 25. Boom. And then the top of the button is at 40, is that right? No, 75, excuse me. Top of the button's at 75. So from 25 to 75, guess what? That is exactly 50%. We'll keep the width the same. We'll start at 25. And so this is now a centered box filling up all of the space. You know, we can add more, I suppose. These little escape key sequences allow us to do more than just type text, which is what is supposed to be between these double quotes. Only the text that will be printed, well, this escapes from that and then does something special. In this case, it does a new line. So I can do something like this. Yay. Okay. Maybe that's too small. Why does this look tiny? Oh, I said 24, the legalese size. Yeah, that's wrong. Let's try more like 32. Yes. Are we centered? Middle center. Yeah, okay. That's the title. Middle center here. In fact, I don't need to restate that if it's the same. It's redundant. Yeah. I guess it could be a little bit larger. Sure. Right? Just acknowledging chat. What else? If I go back, go to credits, we see credits. If I go to options, we see nothing. What do we want? I don't know. Imagine what the player would expect to have. Ironically, the ability to completely mute all the sound design. Yes, that's one of the options that's usually here. Players would expect it. You can imagine it might be a thing we do here. Checkboxes, a slider, pull-down menu, radio buttons. Sure. I don't even know what to put on here yet, so I'm going to leave that blank. Same with deck and path. Don't know what to do with these yet. In fact, path really might be our campaign mode. That would be the larger thing. Like this start would be replaced with something like quick play or something like that. Right? It's in fact, let's actually make a play button because that does sound obvious, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound like a good thing to have, a play button in your game? Instead of calling it start, shall we play? I like it. It's better. And now from here, and you don't really have anything except escape out of it. That's really what I just did. Hit escape to get back up here. You know, you put a little button on the corner, it's got these lines, it looks like options or something, or you hit escape and there's actually a in-game pop-up that says, are you sure you want to quit? And if you say yes, you come back here. And if you say no, that thing goes away and you just resume your game. All right, I guess we could do that. This means we really, well, first of all, we have the opportunity now to start from splash reliably. We can say that the player will always start from this view, which again gives us the option to immediately promote the themes of the game and orient their mindset appropriately to expect things, to think things, to feel things. We can begin to do that right here. We also have technically the ability to add things here that are going to help us throughout the game. I can add one tool that is going to manage the sound and music of all the game. That, yeah, I can put it here and guarantee that it's going to be in the rest of the game. It's going to travel with the player from scene to scene, and as opposed to having a separate, like the same tool in each scene. And frankly, that helps because if I have music starting here and I click this begin button, I'm literally changing scenes, which means I'm deleting everything that was there, including the thing playing the music. And so you'd hear, at best, a hiccup in the music, if not just the music stops and starts all over again because you got here. Well, to have it continuous music, to have continuous data saved from one scene to another, you would not destroy the object on load. And I can do that with code pretty easily. Just ask it to say, please don't destroy it. And it will then travel from scene to scene no matter where we are. It's a little more detail to that mechanic, like a singleton, but the point is, this is something where we can do now because we have a splash screen to start from. Again, we could change our minds about how we want the player to experience things. We could change these menu systems to better fit what we want, but for now this works. There's something that we added here that comports with like what you'd expect games to have, and it kind of makes sense. And we can go in and play our game and come back out to the main menu and check our options and credits and play our game. And yeah, I mean, it's looking a little bit more like a game, if only because these things that players expect to have are there. It's not tailored for what we want to do yet, but it's in place, and we can begin to work on it because it is in place. So, small steps. What I might do is warm up my coffee. Yes. I say it like it's a question. But it's not really a question. I'll be right back. Yeah, well, um, you know, if we're doing menus, let's do the menus. Um, I believe we're in a space where we could just do the quit menu that's in game and says, "Are you sure you want to quit? Yes or no?" I don't see why not. One second. Yeah, we could do that. The idea is when we are in game, and right now we just have a prototype scene, this quit on escape is really only doing one thing. Read when you do actually hit the escape key and go to the main menu. But we could, as I have already sort of indicated I might do, create an in-game menu, little pop-up. Let's grab this pattern. Let's do that stuff. I actually want all of this, don't I? I do. Yeah, I do actually. Give me all this. At least this button. Okay. So this is a small script. It only reads that escape key and goes to the main menu, and that's all it was meant to do. I'm going to do more than that. Oh, I guess I do want some variables. Okay. I'm going to do more than that. I would like it to be not done right here, but down here. I would like this to not just do it, but actually show a pop-up. And I should say exit, not quit. The difference being we're not actually quitting the application. We are just going to the main menu from the game. Right? More explicitly would be something like, are you sure you want to stop this game and go back to the main menu? Because that's what it should be asking. Oh, this style should be relatively simple. Let's just say normal. Again, as I paste, I want to go in and carefully examine the stuff that I pasted to find all of the things that I need to change. Let's actually rename this. Oh, hi, no. Whoa. Whoa, stop. Label size at 1024. This is an indication that I'm actually using the pixel width of 1024 pixels as a benchmark for how large that font size should be. This is ridiculously huge. I don't need it that big at all. Let's go to this. So this will move, but let's look at this for a moment. We are doing a box. Now I called it a label, but doing a pop-up box. And I'm going to make it a particular size, yada, yada, yada. It's in the middle, and then there's no legalese. And then there's buttons, and there's going to be two of them because it is technically called a confirm pop-up. It is an alert pop-up when you see a pop-up that says, hey, here's a thing happening, and there's only one button. It says, okay. So it's an alert to tell you a thing, but that's all it's there for. And that okay is there to confirm I have read that thing that you are telling me. A confirm pop-up box, by contrast, has two buttons because it needs to be, are you sure you want to do a thing? Yes or no. Typically one of those button names is called cancel. And the other one is whatever it is, in this case, exit. This will go to the main menu. This will not. This will frankly not do anything except get rid of the box that's currently up. Shoe. The button position, all that stuff needs to change. This is definitely not bold. In fact, I don't think I need to keep restating this. I think I've just said it once. But I'll leave it for now and clean it up later. Okay, this is a button. Button size, sounds fine, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Yes. So now we're just going to change the size of this. So this is ready to do it immediately, which is not what we want, actually. There is a time when this displays a pop-up. And there's most of the time it does not. In fact, this should just be false by default. And in that way, I can tell whether the pop-up is actually up or not. Let's call it. If this is not up, then let's just get out of this. Let's not do that, right? This is the super fast, easy, quick way to say skip everything after this. Otherwise, there is a pop-up to display and we do all this stuff, yeah? Okay, so cool. Guess what? Our cancel button literally says no pop-up, please. So we're setting this false here, and it is false by default. So where do we set this to be true, right? Well, guess what? We have a thing for that. So we're setting it true, we're setting it false. Nice, yeah. So instead of immediately quitting when we hit escape, now escape actually brings up this menu. It's going to say, are you sure you want to quit? Blah, blah, blah. But let's position this correctly. Well, it's not exactly that far on the edge. In fact, I don't mind it being mostly in the middle, like taking up a lot of the screen, because I don't want you to be confused that there is an interruption to play. You hit the escape key, meaning you might be wanting to get out of this. So from 25% to the edge, 50% long, and then 25% to the edge. So let's do this. And, oh, what the heck, likewise, 25% down, yes, same thing, same thing, same thing. Let's just do that. This is a big old box. Not a label, it's a box. I know, I know. OCD. Okay, so, this displays middle center. I don't think I want middle center, but I'm going to adjust that once I see it. And then we have some buttons. If this is nearly going to 75% at the bottom of the box, then the top of this button should come off the bottom of the box a little bit. Let's start it at 6. Let's try that. Oh, sorry, 6 height. Excuse me. And width, if it's again, we have two buttons to do. So I'm going to say both are, I mean, they're centered, but then they're on either side. There's going to be a little bit of space from middle, and they are a width of some kind. This is 5. Okay, all right. So if I say 3, sorry, I keep doing that. Mixing up my X's and my Y's. Two-dimensional dyslexic. So this is one button, and I kind of want the same width and height. But, and in fact, I want the same Y position, but the X, I think this is right. And we test. How shall I test? Escape. So it's a box. It's kind of centered. A lot of the pattern is already working for me, like the highlighting and stuff, so I'm happy about that. What am I looking for? Oh, this is going to exactly the middle. I can see it. So I actually don't want buttons to be that wide. Oh, yeah, I do. Oh, okay, let's just adjust this. Yeah, let's adjust all this. And no, I don't want it to be that wide. Oh, that just snapped right into place, but looks great. Okay, cool. Don't need to worry about it. Let's move on. This is incorrect. And if I say top center, it's not quite, sorry, upper center, whatever. It's not quite right either. It's going to be way up here. Right. But, you know, it's kind of close. What are we looking at? I mean, first of all, this entire box could be, doesn't need to be this tall. If I move it down by 1, I'm going to make it shorter by 2. Centered. Yes? Yes. Cool. And I moved this up by 1. No, I did it by 2, did I not? No, that works. Okay, cool. Nice little tiny adjustment is this text is so close to the top. Luckily, there's the thing called padding. And this is pixels, is it not? Yeah, integer. This is in pixels. So I'm going to have to use this multiplier with height. In other words, I can take another percentage of screen space, which is great. Good thing. I need to make this an integer. 10% is too much. How about 5%? That looks fantastic, does it not? Is it not the most glorious thing in the world? If we cancel, we cancel. We hit escape, and it's here, and we exit, it goes there. Isn't that nice? Nice. Magic. I mean, could it be better? Of course. There's definitely more fancy stuff you could do. Like if this is actually running and you want to pause time, we do have control over space and time in our game. And we can do that while this is up. But it gets a little tricky. Managing game time versus real time could be a tricky thing. All right, this is already on the script. The script is already on a prefab, and the prefab is being used all over the place. Let's rethink that. I don't mind that we have quit on escape. I don't know that we would need quit on escape, for example, here in the credits, because we already have a back button. Don't need it, right? For the moments while we were developing these menus and they did not have a back button, this was helpful. Maybe we never used it, but whatevs. We now have a back button. This literally funnels the player to do only the one thing that we want it to do. It's also up all the time on screen, so we really don't need it. We don't need it on Splash either. Do we actually have this on main menu as well? We do. How funny. All right. At this time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we actually have a menu system. As bare bones as this is, it's nice that it kind of looks like a game, right? It took like no time at all. We spent 0 time on this, right? This was dead simple to be like, yeah, let's menu system, right? And this frees us back up now to think about the player experience and how this should be adjusted. Our ability to hold in our head a thing that might be true, like the thing we are looking at. This is the menu now. That's a truth. It's objectively true. And yet also hold the idea that we can change this and we should change it because maybe path is actually something we should call campaign and it should be a big button right here. And this should be called quick match or something. You know, these are possibilities we should also be able to hold in our head. Design requires us to be comfortable with this ambiguity, to be comfortable with this possibility space, to hold at the same time, this is objectively true, and let's also consider this possibility and whether that is better than this. Definitely want to be able to do that. So building this out is good. It is definitely not going to look like this. In fact, let's change it. Should we do that? This is the splash screen. It is a 2D space that we've been working on. It's not even visible here in this scene view because the only thing that's actually 3D in this stuff is one plane set to be the size of the screen. Like literally that's all it is. All the menus are that, in fact. When we hit play, you don't see these items. These are being generated by code every single frame. So it's literally only visible in the viewport. That's what this GUI system's meant to do. That's why we were adjusting this in code and not as a physical item, although we could. I mean, there's no reason why you can't make physical items. Legacy text mesh. Yeah, we could absolutely do that. Right? And that would be around when we hit stop. Because if I did this, okay, it's there. And, you know, stop and it's still there, right? So this is different. This is a 3D item that's actually an object in the scene. What we've been doing is playing around with code that draws on the viewport after the rest of the scene has already been drawn. This scene is still running. I mean, we could do fun stuff. How fun? Well, and and the scene is running. Our menu could be much more dynamic than, we could do whatever we want. Don't know what we're doing yet, right? But one thing we could absolutely do is make this gray card look prettier, because it's literally just gray. But I have more. We could do more. How about a wood grain color? When we go into our game, this is meant to be a tabletop. It's kind of a joke because it's literally these Art Deco shapes, these 60s style, just some variation in contrast and color so you can see that we are manipulating the table to turn and to zoom in and stuff. Like, without these squares, you wouldn't see it. It would just look gray and you wouldn't know what's going on. But against this pattern, you can see the cards move towards each other and such. So it's important that it's there. But it looks like crap. Can we do something about that? Yes, we can. Let's change this. Right? If I find the items that I put in here, I can turn them off. And I can replace this simple gray texture with another texture, like oak. Suddenly, our game is going to look entirely different. Look at this nice tabletop. Oh, glorious tabletop play. Look at this. Oh. It even kind of looks like a table. There's a little bit of highlight going on over there. It looks a little bit shiny. You don't have anything in the background. It's literally like the black void. But check how nice our cards look against this table. Oh, glorious. Well, is this the one change we're going to make to our background? No, I think this is just change. It's just improvement of some kind. In fact, I like how dark it is with the light colors against it, so you get the contrast. It's really easy to see. In fact, the effects look better. That's nice. Interesting, right? We just made one change and suddenly it looks like a different game almost, Well, I want to promote the idea that this is part of the theme. If part of the theme is we are playing cards on a table, that's one thing. If it's a little ridiculous that we're battling with cards and that they actually have, camera shake and effects and stuff, and they're called Hippobot and Unstoppable Force, if that's all part of the same theme, then maybe table helps, right? Maybe an actual battlefield texture helps, like grass and rocks and things. Maybe that's better, which looks better. Well, we can play around with that and see which works better. Open up that possibility space, be comfortable with the ambiguity, and play around with it. This looks terrible. What do we do? Well, we have something. We can fix this right now. I'm gonna go ahead and promote this oak texture on all of our menus right now. No reason not to. And I think it's helpful to say this is beginning to assert for the player a particular theme. In fact, we should do it from the very beginning until we have a better idea. This sounds fine. I'm pretty sure we're going to get tired of this oak color pretty quick. But imagine now what it was like just a moment ago with all the gray, because it was all gray, right? Imagine the difference now. That's really what design is about, is comparing and using the comparison evaluation to help us understand what works well and what could be better. if something could be better, we focus on it and try to find the better. If it works better, it's because we're looking at it, we're evaluating it, you know? Oh, yeah. Check. Look how different this game looks now. I think it's just lucky that I used yellow, which shows up really nice against this wood color. Bruh, it's looking like a real game now. Kind of, sort of, almost. Now it's a little too simple now because we didn't go anywhere. We're just looking at a tabletop, but it sort of promotes the idea really quickly. Oh, I'm playing a game. Oh, I'm across a table from somebody else. They've already laid down these cards. I'm definitely not missing that. Now, one could make a really good argument for um, how helpful that old gray pattern with the squares was in the context of this prototype that we've been building up, and say, well, it was neat to see a lot of variation between different parts of the battlefield. Some squares were big, there were lines. This just kind of has the same wood texture all the way across. I agree. Interesting how we kind of lost something. There's some qualities that we lost, while others made dramatic improvements. So overall, I'd say it's a bonus, but you're right, we did lose something. What do we do about that? Well, let's see if we can reclaim some of that awesome with other things that we can do to say this. I mean, here's the really simple idea. Could we just add those back and make it look good? No, it's going to look terrible. But imagine, right? Imagine if these weren't just gray, but more, subdued variations. In fact, maybe more organic shapes and not square because it sort of blends into the shape of the card. Then, yeah, we get that contrast, variation, progression. I mean, yeah, back rhythm too, because there's lines and squares. There was some graphic design here. It was cheap and sad, really. But it did add some things that we shouldn't forget about, right? If we have the opportunity to make things better and intentionally retain things that we might otherwise lose, we should. Really, heads up design work is about careful evaluation and understanding the value of things. Oh, I want that to collapse twice. It collapsed once and stopped like it was. Oh, I know why. This thing said, hey, I'm stranded and I need to collapse. And before it had a chance to say that again, a new lane opened up. Okay, so that actually makes sense. I just don't think that's what I want that mechanic to do. It's not necessarily a bug. It was doing exactly what I asked it to do, but I think I want to refine that mechanic. It's the timing of when it calls out that it needs to collapse. In other words, I think this thing was asking that, and then it went through the whole battle cycle where another lane opened up. And that wasn't actually part of the collapse. Interesting. All right. So what do we got? Well, I think we have some progress on the game. I'm probably going to stop right here. The idea being most games have a menu and they start with a splash screen that kind of explains what's up. But now, boy, it's front and center. This name probably really needs to change. And although Shuffle Wars is just silly enough to promote one of the main themes, which is don't take yourself too seriously, It is also, it feels really amateur and cheap and doesn't promote some of the other themes that are really important. Like, you need to be serious about taking tactical combat and sending troops into battle. You need to be serious about that and get better at this because it's actually uh, going to take some brain power and thinking ahead. This doesn't say that at all. This says just, it says cards and battle. That's really all. And that's all we had in the beginning. But we have more now. This menu system is a little more complete, and that's fun. Um, but I think it's important to note that we can go further, that we should go further. And, maybe escape from here should go back to the splash screen just for fun. I say fun like it's fun. But you otherwise cannot get back to the splash screen, and I would suggest even the old arcade games have an attract screen that does cycle through all of the menus to make it more interesting, and I think there's just good reason to do this. In fact, I'm going to use this little bit of code. Thank you much. I'm going to put it on the main menu. I'm going to have this load splash. Such that if we begin the game, main menu, and I hit escape, yay. Okay, good. So we actually are able to navigate all the menus. Fun, fun, fun. This does quit. It's not going to quit when you're in the editor, but yay. And in that way, a little bit of visual interest has been added at the same time that we have implemented some mechanics, and I think that's good for today. If you hear me trying to get out of here, you're not wrong. But I did want to stick to the schedule, do a little bit of incremental progress, and move on. This battle card game is nearly core gameplay complete. And the adjustments we might make to some of the mechanics in this core gameplay are still in flux a little bit because we're keeping the possibility space open. But a top to bottom revision of the visuals, of course, there's no sound yet. Minor fixes to timing and things are still in the works. Our progress continues on adjusting minor rules to the core gameplay while we begin to consider, these are all awful. Awful meaning we've got ones in them. While we consider the broader gameplay, like, hey, what is that extra progression players could do when they play this game? Is there deck building in this game? If so, what cards do we add, etc., etc. By having this core gameplay be interesting, complete, fun, balanced, etc., we ensure that the things we add to it are going to be building on something that is solid, and that is important. We don't want to have to come back and retool the core gameplay because we made other things look pretty or whatever. That's not progressive. That's not helpful. By contrast, we are almost safe to start adding some really cool stuff like a path progression or deck building or something, because this core gameplay is more or less complete. And that's good. All right. And on that note, I say we're good. I will end the stream here. And if you are following on Twitch, I thank you. If you are watching this VOD on YouTube, please follow us on Twitch and show up on stream. And you can help us make more of this game as we go forward. It's been a couple of months. I guess we're coming up on 3 months almost. And this casual development has resulted in a brand new card game that you can be a part of as well. We invite you to do so. Thank you for showing up. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.